bring the regular meeting of the Houghton Lake Community Schools Board of Education to order. Roll call, please.
Whittington.
Here.
Jeske.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Christian.
Here.
Souter.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Halliday.
Here.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll make that motion. I'll support it.
Motioned by Nichols, supported by Brown. All those in favor with your raised right hand.
Aye.
Passes 7-0. Need a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Motion by Brown, supported by Jeske. All those in favor with your raised right hand.
Aye.
7-0. Next up, we have a school safety presentation by Deputy Mike, and I am really sorry, could you please pronounce your last name? Zarevsky,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
So, good evening, first of all. So obviously, when something like Oxford hits close to home, all the safety concerns come to light. I've said this multiple times in the past week and a half here at Houghton Lake. I believe we are ahead of the curve as far as where we're at safety-wise for our students and our staff and our buildings. One of the reasons is this position, the fact that this district has supported the school resource officer position for so long. It says a lot on how this district looks at the safety of their students, and being here myself personally and being able to put these plans in place, I think that that helps exponentially. So the first line that we have, and I know we've got a lot of new board members, so I'll go over this really fast. This includes our lockdown. But what we have in place here at the schools, and it's been several years since we put it in place, is called the Standard Response Protocols. It's through a foundation called the I Love You Guys Foundation. John Michael Keyes, the founder, lost his daughter to an active violence incident out in Platte River, Colorado, several years ago. And after that, he decided somebody needed to do something so that law enforcement and the schools and everybody were on the same page, using basically the same terminology on how to respond to any type of emergency situation. So what these standard response protocols do is they give us a vernacular to use, and this is used throughout our entire county. Our district, Roscommon, Charlton Heston, the court system, multiple churches, the public library, all use this, the standard response protocol. So when somebody calls dispatch and says this is the situation we have going on, or one of the superintendents or somebody calls another district and says this is what we have going on, everybody knows what that means because we're all on the same page with it. Some of the basic ones, shelter in place, shelter, that's our tornado would be the same as a tornado drill. So something weather related outside that we need to keep the kids inside. So that would be an announcement overhead, shelter in the building, shelter in your safe spot. Evacuate, we refer that to our fire alarms, our fire drills. We have not used the overhead announcements for that because we have the alarm systems for fires. But any other incident that would be inside the building, whether we had a gas leak or something inside the building we had to get the kids outside for, they would announce evacuate and then go to your safe spot outside of the building. We have a hold in your room or your area. So what that is, they'll make an announcement, hold in your room or your area and clear the halls. If we have a medical emergency, we need to bring an ambulance in. Different situations where we just don't want people in the hallways, we will announce that, and then our kids will stay in the classrooms or the lunchroom, wherever they're at, and continue business as usual until whatever's going on in the hallways is completed, and then we will release everybody back to normal activity in the building. The new one that we have, it's called secure mode. That used to be our lockout situation, which is something dangerous going on outside the buildings. That changed this past year for the simple fact that we have lockdown and lockout. And in a situation where you're anxious and your adrenaline is flowing and you're trying to announce either a lockdown or a lockout, I've heard it in just our drills. You get somebody on the PA and they're going lockdown, lock out, down, out, and it's confusing. So the state and the I Love You Guys Foundation adapted secure mode. Most of you might remember a couple years ago we had the situation in Rose City. We had the bomb threats, and that gentleman ended up using that to rob a bank, and he went mobile in a vehicle. So our schools, at that time it was a lockout. What it would be now is secure mode. We would get everybody into the building. We have placards that go up on the doors. It says we are in a secure mode situation and nobody in or nobody out of the buildings. That one went on for quite a while. So after we made sure that the threat was, maybe it was mobile, but we have enough law enforcement here, enough personnel, that it's not a direct threat at this point, we would put up that it's kind of a fluid situation where we will vet people. Say there's a parent that comes up, we'll go out, make sure that's the parent, and then we will walk the child out. We had CTC students that needed to leave during that, so we had a couple of us, we walked the CTC students to the bus. Everything was secure over in Muxford, that was far enough away from the incident. So that's a secure mode. It could be, we had an incident here where somebody saw a gentleman walking with a big knife on his hip. We would just put the school in secure mode until somebody could come and talk to that gentleman. There's something basically dangerous outside of the building, we bring everybody in. And then the lockdown drills. Lockdown, locks lights out of sight. That's what our students and staff will hear overhead. You'll hear that announcement twice. At that point, the teachers in the room will put the boots in the door. Students will hide and lights will go out. We train for that. We have several of those drills a year. We, by law, have to have one in our passing time. So if we have kids in the hallways, kids in the bathrooms, they know what to do with that. We have been doing these SRPs for several years, and we practice them regularly. So having this system in place it's one of the better systems that I've seen, and that the fact that we use it here and that it's throughout the county it's a big advantage. One of the other tools that we have here in Houghton Lake is we use it's an app called the School Guard app. All of our staff and administrators have it on their phone. It's an app that the big use that reason we got it is there is let me find it on my phone. If you can see it, when it pulls up, the big red button, it's a report armed intruder. So what that does is anybody that has this app, the staff in the building, hit that button, a report will automatically go to our dispatch center, to all of the other staff in all of our buildings. The company has a geofence around our buildings. So anybody in that geofence gets that notification, as well as at least 75 to 80% of the law enforcement in our county have an app on our phones called Hero 911. It's the sister app to that. So if that armed intruder button gets pushed, it automatically alerts any law enforcement officer in our county, on duty or off duty, that there's an active violence incident going on and the school has been put in lockdown to respond here. This app also has a 911 only function. If we have somebody out in the playground, an aide, a teacher with students, and somebody gets injured, there's a 911 only function to that phone. There's also a teacher assist button. If a teacher has something, say, on the playground, their classroom, hallway, whether they have a fight going on, whether they have anything that they have, they can hit that teacher assist button. And then anybody in that geofence that has that app on their phone will be alerted. It usually marks within 20 to 30 feet of where they're at. They also have a function that they can type in what's going on and what room they're in if they need to go to that. We've also used that app. There's a principal push feature. One of the other reasons that we got it is the admin, our principals, assistant principals, myself, have a button on there. It's called principal push, so we can send messages to all of the staff. Anything from, hey, there's donuts in the teacher's lounge, to we use it for, I saw that face, to we actually use that app, that part of that app for our lockdown. So we teach and we train that if we are in a lockdown situation, it doesn't matter. I don't know if any of you saw the video from Oxford. Believe that shooter actually was outside of a classroom door knocking on it, saying he was law enforcement. And at the end, I believe it was, okay dude, thanks, and he left. So you could tell it wasn't law enforcement. We teach and we train that it doesn't matter who's knocking on your door or what they're saying or what is announced overhead. You do not come out of your classroom until law enforcement takes that boot off that door and then we come in. Well, that led to a little bit of a problem because we have a lot of doors here. If we go into a lockdown drill, we have to unlock all those doors. So that app has actually worked well for us. We, in the past, had been sending out a password in the morning, an off-the-wall Rumpelstiltskin, rhinoceros, and letting our staff know that we may or may not be having a lockdown drill today. If we by chance do today's password will be such and such. We then train that once we do that, we will never use that password again. So that app has actually worked well so that we can release our students and staff from our lockdown drills without having to go around and unlock all of the doors. So that app is on top of being a good safety feature, it's really good for our communication for our staff. One of the other things that we're working on for threats, I've been working on it for about a year now. COVID has put a big damper on trying to get trained for it. We're working on a threat assessment team. It would include myself. At this point, Mr. Watson and Carissa Bonner from the School-Based Health Center. What that would look like is we would, if we got a referral from a staff member about a student, whether they were making threats, maybe they were drawing pictures, could be a culmination of anything that somebody deems we need to put this student in the forefront of what we're doing. There's a template, a program that you can actually use to go through their background, their family life, student life, their behaviors here at the school, and put that into an assessment model so that we could deem how much of a threat that student actually is. I have the things in place to get that started. I'm just trying to find training that we can do that works for all of us, as well as obviously now that's not a training. I've talked to several people that we want to do online. It's something that actually works better kind of in a face-to-face setting. So as soon as I can find a training for that, we're going to put a team together so we can have that in place for our district as well. The boots in our doors, safety-wise, we've been in for a long time. Our maintenance staff is really good about keeping the caps and everything in there. We order them quite a bit to keep them so that they're fluid. That is a big deterrent if we ever do have an active violence incident here. So we do have a lot of safety features implemented here in the district. I said it before, I really think looking at other places and with what we have here, we are ahead of the curve. My position, after Oxford, I was able to go to several classrooms and talk to students who were upset, that didn't know, just had questions. You know, what do we do if we have this here, even though they've had the training? I have students here at the high school, middle school level. We had an assembly and explained everything. We went over the standard response protocols again with all the students. We addressed the threats, the copycat threats. So just having this position here, whether it's me or my replacement, hopefully when I retire next year, when my wife tells me I can retire, I guess. So we do have a lot of safety protocols in place that most people don't see. And that's by design for our students. They don't need to see the stuff that happens behind the curtain. They are very safe. The staff, the administration here do a phenomenal job. I work well, they work well with me from top to bottom. So with the superintendent position, from our previous one to the current one, if I make suggestions, they're really good about following through. We have a discussion about putting these safety protocols in place if it's something that we need. I've had several staff members, obviously in the last couple of weeks, come to me about things that we may or may not need to implement. So the staff is very involved in it as well. So, like I said, I think unfortunately these situations happen. This one hit close to home and it puts everything in the forefront. hopefully we don't ever have to deal with that here, but I think unfortunately if we do, we're as prepared as we could be for it. Questions I can answer for anybody? Wow, really? Perfect. Thank you guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. All right, next up are public comments. I've heard from 2 people who have public comments, but before I call you, I'm gonna read our paragraph that we read before we do that. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. While it is not our intent to stifle public comment, speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. If you are unsure of the legal ramifications of what you're about to say, we urge you to consult first with your legal advisor. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Delegations of more than 5 persons wishing to speak on the same topic shall appoint 1 person to present their views to the board. So right now I have Ashley Dowland.
Hi, I am here looking to see with the whole COVID vaccination, quarantining, and antibodies, if my child can be treated as she is vaccinated due to the fact that she has the antibodies to COVID. She missed 20 days straight of school due to being exposed. Never once did she have a symptom. She went from all A's to doing horrible in her eyes, getting C's and D's in classes, having negative comments on her report card, and I feel my child is being, I don't even know how to she's hurt. It's ruining her self-esteem, and I just feel that she has a natural immunity to it, which is about the same as a vaccinated person, so I want to see if I can get the approval or what I have to do to have her treated that way to where she's not quarantined again for 20 days straight.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Next up is Jen Oster.
Good evening. I was looking through this afternoon on the agenda for this evening's meeting and didn't see Renee's request on their last meeting. She requested that the board put on the agenda to be discussing the current protocols for quarantining students. So I did email, this is not news to probably any of you unless you didn't see it from last night. I did email the board and the superintendent, and I'm just gonna go ahead and read that email because I'm kind of done waiting for things to happen. So now this can be, you can hear it publicly if you haven't read it already. It can be heard by the public and also by the newspaper. The emails just said, "Dear Mr. Williams and HLCS board members, I'm sorry that this email is later than I had planned, but I wanted to be sure to get it to you all before the board meeting tomorrow night. A few weeks ago, I talked with 4 of our board members on the phone one evening and let them know that if the quarantining of healthy unvaccinated students continued, I would be strongly considering a lawsuit. I explained my frustration with the lack of real education available to quarantine students, and that the discrimination being leveled against unvaccinated students is completely unacceptable and certainly unwarranted, given the high number of positive COVID cases in our fully vaccinated faculty and staff. I want you all to know that I was sincere in my comments. A few days after our phone conversations, I contacted Jamie McElveny, the leader of Let Them Play Michigan Incorporated. Jimmy Thomas is the attorney that has been litigating the majority of the lawsuits with Let Them Play, winning 15 of the 18 cases here in Michigan so far that I know of, regarding healthy students being forced into quarantine due to possible exposure. I learned that it would cost $4,000 to bring a lawsuit, which would be against the superintendent and the board, and the donated funds to Let Them Play would help cover half of that amount. I would have no problem finding other families in our community to help come up with the other $2,000 needed. In fact, I already have a list of nearly 30 names. At the last board meeting, like I said earlier, Renee Nichols requested that the quarantining protocols be put on the next meeting agenda for board discussion and consideration. I highly recommend that the board grants her request and for this required quarantining to stop. Otherwise, I will be in touch with Jimmy Thomas to begin legal proceedings should one of my children or another willing family's child be forced into quarantine again. I honestly had hoped that tonight you guys would just have it on the agenda, and we'd be making some steps towards eliminating that, but that wasn't the case, so I just felt the need to read it here tonight. I honestly don't want to go forward with a lawsuit. I want it to just be settled. I want it to be dealt with. We had Ashley here tonight talking about her daughter who's gone from straight A's to doing poorly in her classes and really just struggling emotionally. She's not the only child. There are so many. I mentioned in the last meeting, my 7th grade student, when his last quarantine, 2 in a row pretty much, I watched from a straight A student then struggling to get through his math and just not having that cooperative learning. He is a straight A student, he's continued, but not all the students in the school have parents available to be with them, and the school's job is to educate children.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Next up are reports. Superintendent Pro Tem report. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Good evening. It's been a fast and furious few days since my appointment as pro tempore, that's how you say it. I would like to thank the board for entrusting me with this role. I do consider it an honor. I'd like to thank Deputy Zrebsky for his school safety presentation tonight, and also for the presenting to our students and staff during the 2 school assemblies last week. Our thoughts are with the students and staff and families of the Oxford High School community. I'd like to highlight a few things that we've been working on. I met with our principals on my official day 1, December 2nd, and reviewed a few topics such as safety drills, MPE, report deadlines, school improvement, and immediate needs. Research has also been done with our ISD superintendent and a Neola representative on the ETS, the Emergency Temporary Standard Vaccination Policy. On another note, hopefully you've all seen, a survey was sent out last week to all parents and staff. It's also been posted to the main page of our district website. It's called the ESSER 3 American Rescue Plan Stakeholder Input Survey. This is referring to a federal funding grant in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're seeking feedback from all district and community stakeholders to help determine how the district should best utilize the upcoming funding made available through the American Rescue Plan. So please encourage friends, relatives, neighbors to complete this survey. It's going to be on our website, open through Sunday evening, December 19th. Our principals will also be discussing this topic with their staff at their next meeting. As of today, I took a peek at it today, and we have already received 114 responses, so I think that's good. With regard to the COVID positive numbers, I can say that the daily average has dropped from 9 to 1.33. At this point, I think we're moving in a positive direction, and we're seeing our attendance percentages increase. I would like to take a moment to congratulate and recognize Kim Chinnery. Kim has met the requirements for certification from the Michigan School Business Officials and has earned the Pupil Accounting Specialist certification. This award reflects a high degree of academic and professional preparation established by MSBO. Kim has made great strides with regard to our pupil accounting and state reporting, and it's truly a pleasure to have her in this role in our district. So in summary, it's been extremely busy. However, I think that the immediate needs are being addressed and we're progressing successfully. We are looking forward to Ben's return and wish him well during his recovery.
Thank you. Any questions for Dana? All right, thank you so much. Now you put on your next hat and do a finance report for us.
Well, I can go over the fall count stats first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So our fall 2021 student count was certified at 1,174.71, which is a significant increase. Last spring, our number was 1,130.3. In the fall of 20, it was 1,140.32. So essentially, we're a little over 34 students up from last fall, which is great news. And with regard to the finance report, so the expenditure report was sent out, and along with the budget highlights, and basically There aren't any changes or updates from the last meeting. The Edgenuity function 225 and the function 371 will be adjusted with the next amendment, so. Any questions on that?
Thank you. Next up are action items. And I'll be looking for a motion, but I'll take the burden of reading the motion, so I'll just look for your motion. Under action item 7A, we'll need a motion, recognize and approve that there is a compelling reason to adopt a vaccination policy after one reading under bylaw 0131.1 to comply with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration emergency temporary standard on vaccination and testing that requires employers with 100 or more employees to establish, implement, and enforce a written policy by December 6, 2021, requiring employees to either be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or provide proof of regular testing for COVID-19 and wear a face covering in lieu of vaccination. So we need to get a motion to put it on the table so we can discuss it.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Josephine.
I'll support.
Support by Christian. For discussion, Dana, can you help the board with that?
Sure, I'll do my best. So that's a lot of language that you just read there. Basically, action item A, allows the board to adopt the vaccination policy with just one reading because there's a compelling reason of the time-sensitive deadline. According to the MASB attorney, deadline of December 6th or shortly thereafter. So we're not too far behind, but we'd like to get that adopted as soon as possible.
With the one reading, can we change the wording and still adopt it? If we wanted to change wording?
I'm thinking.
Or would we need someone present here to change the language so that it matches perfectly and makes it legal?
Are you talking about this first motion or are you talking about the second motion?
The second one.
The second one, okay. So the first motion would be whether or not we agree that there's a compelling reason to do it in one motion. And if we don't agree with that, then we would basically go to two readings.
Okay.
And so that's the first step for the board, is to decide whether they're comfortable with one reading or if they'd wanna go to a first and a second reading.
I think we need to, in my opinion, I think we need to do a first and a second reading, just before the fact that to me, it's not compelling, because the government has put it on hold.
Except the fact that we're under a time crunch, because we need to be prepared in the event they put it in place. So, for example, there are other districts now that are collecting vaccination statuses of their employees, and they have a deadline of December 17th.
I don't see
So-
why you couldn't collect it without this policy.
This authorizes us to do so. So I don't think we can move forward as a district without having the policy in place.
Have we asked our employees if they would like to let us know?
Like, they could voluntarily.
We have not.
So and the way Renee's thinking, I'm thinking the same way, that, you know what, unfortunately it is time sensitive, but having that second reading and some more details, a lot of the states are, you know, going against what the government's saying. I personally have a hard time sitting there deciding if I need to make her do it or not make her do it.
So again, so the question right now is, do we do it in one reading or not? So, and if that's what you're speaking towards, I understand what you're saying. Any other comments or discussion? All right,
I don't see
Go ahead.
something, Paul, and I think I understand where they're coming from, because if there is language that we want to consider changing it, or need somebody present here to be able to answer those questions for us like we have in the past. Obviously on the policy, there's different boxes where there's different options. We can't change any of that in the first reading.
Is what you're saying. Like if we were to sit here right now with the first reading and change that, we can't also, basically what you're saying is we can't also approve it if we make those changes, even though we agreed on them and we're making the policy. I can't see why we couldn't do that.
So,
I am not trying to be obtuse.
No, that's okay.
So the first question is, I understand you're saying it's begging the second question too.
It
But
is.
the first question is, are we comfortable with one reading? If we're not, then we would take a vote on that, and then we would go to item B, and that would be our first reading. Brian, what?
If we agree that we can vote on it on one reading, and we can't come to an agreement on a motion for that, can we table it at that point? Until we do a
Why
second
not?
reading?
I'm table
Good
anyway.
question. Right, we don't have to, just because we're agreeing to the first one doesn't mean we have to agree to the second
So
one.
we can
That's what
entertain
I'm
the
saying.
idea.
Yeah, we can entertain the idea of one reading, but that doesn't mean that we're approving the second one. We're saying is, we can
Entertain.
handle it in one.
Okay, I understand.
All right, are we ready to vote? Do a roll call, please.
Souter,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Whittington,
Yes.
Halliday,
Yes.
Brown,
yes,
Christian.
Yes.
Okay. So that passes 7-0 to do in one reading. I understand with the additions that everyone brought up. So the next is to, and you have the policy in front of you, adopt policy 8450.06, COVID vaccination, testing, and face covering to comply with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration emergency temporary standard on vaccination and testing that requires employers with 100 or more employees to establish, implement, and enforce a written policy by December 6, 2021, requiring employees to either be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or provide proof of regular testing for COVID-19 and wear a face covering in lieu of vaccination. So now we have the policy in front of us, and Dana, do you wanna walk us through that?
You have to do a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, motion please. And to put it on the table.
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
I'll make it.
Alright, so we have our policy in front of us.
Okay, so essentially, the policy in front of you is providing the superintendent the ability to, compile the administrative guidelines in order to be compliant with OSHA and MIOSHA, should that go through. It hasn't gone through, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, it may not happen at all. But in order for us to prepare for that, it's good to have it in place so that we can move forward with establishing our guidelines, sending it out to our employees. And it's essentially, the policy is if OSHA and MIOSHA, come forth with this, then it's either be fully vaccinated or wear a mask and do weekly testing. So we're not forcing to do one or the other. They can choose. So we're not forcing people to be vaccinated. They have the option.
Are we requesting that information prior to MIOSHA or anybody else enforcing it?
So voluntarily, like, we're not gonna make people give us their vaccination cards, but we would like to start collecting them so that in the event that this order comes through, we know which ones we would need to test. And this is strictly coming from OSHA and MyOSHA. This isn't like our district. Every district is going through this and dealing with this at this time.
And we understand that. The problem is, the problem I'm having right now is with how this is worded, when it is not a regulation right now, and we don't know if it will be. You're wanting to just collect, which that includes compelling vaccination of employees, sorry. That's the only part I see that we need to worry about right now. I don't think the other wording in here for the testing of and wearing masks, I don't think the rest of that needs to even be in there until it is
Cause what it
a
says is,
guideline or a record.
and what I'm reading is it says that we'll comply with any rules that MyOSHA puts up.
Right.
Which is fine, but they don't have any right now.
Exactly.
So how could we even start collecting the data if we're gonna comply with their rules? They don't have any right now.
I think the idea is when they put it in place, we have to be prepared for that.
So you can't technically start collecting data then? Because they haven't put it in
Put
place.
it in place.
I think that the big wording in this policy is right after the MyOSHA, in the first line there, may, and then after the few strike throughs where it says as promulgated and enforced. So if they don't do anything, then I don't necessarily think we need to
And that's,
carry forth anything.
you're right, that's what I'm saying. So
So-
we really shouldn't be collecting data unless this is enacted.
Correct.
We could approve a policy that says we're giving the district authority to, or the superintendent authority to, if MyOSHA goes through with it. But we
Right.
can't do it now.
So is there,
But
I
there's
guess
also-
that's the wording that stuck out to me. Is there something that you think in there that contradicts it? To say that we would start immediately?
Well,
What it
Because
says
she
in
just
May.
expressed it would be easier if we started
Started
it now.
It would be easier, but.
yeah,
But you could have it voluntarily,
Correct.
correct.
and there might be X% that will voluntarily, I mean, my employer's done it. They've asked us to put our vaccination in
Right.
as an option.
And other districts have done surveys of their employees, so it's just, if this gets enacted and we have nothing.
If it gets enacted, they're
it's
gonna
be
change
tough.
the date. They're gonna have to, because nobody's gonna be in compliance.
And
I don't know.
nobody should be gathering data
Data
without
without
it being
without it
enacted
being
according to
enacted.
this, the way it's written.
Okay, I do have a couple questions, just to make sure I'm tracking what you guys are saying and what I'm hearing from the district. So Dana, if I understand it correctly, and I could be wrong on both sides, MyOSHA is telling us that we need to have, MyOSHA and our legal counsel is telling us that we have to have this policy in place immediately should they decide to enact their own rule.
Correct.
Okay. Which puts the board and the district in very much a catch-22. Okay. And the district's preference is to begin collecting data, and how does that help the district if you begin collecting data now?
So if this is implemented by OSHA and MyOSHA, then they could say, starting the first week in January, when we come back, we have to either test our employees or have their vaccination statuses on file. We have a lot of employees.
Well, we don't test, they have to
And-
get their own test.
That's part of the administrative guidelines that we need to set up, and we haven't done that yet
But
until.
that's probably their guidelines, so that's probably should have been in here then too. That it's not at our cost.
But that's part of what Mr. Williams and I would be discussing and putting together as far as the administrative guidelines. But we haven't moved forward with that until we get through this process.
But we have to have a whole policy for the whole thing. For you to implement administrative guidelines, there's gotta be a policy that matches that.
That's what this is here.
But it doesn't say anything about us covering.
It says
The
the superintendent
vaccinations.
is authorized to issue necessary administrative guidelines if we
Right,
approve
and
this.
I don't know, I think that's a cost factor, and I think that's a board decision.
So the other question then I have is, if we don't adopt it at all, first reading, second reading, what is the liability to the district for not adopting it? Will there be some kind of penalty to us? And what do we normally do when we have a MIOSHA regulation? For instance, there's all sorts of MIOSHA regulations out there about scaffolding, about yard work, I mean, and I am not aware in my time on the board that it's ever come to me to vote on that, nor the costs associated with implementing that. MIOSHA said they have the authority to do that in the workplace, and the district has the responsibility to comply.
Well, I think the difference
So
is.
that's why I'm not trying to, I
No,
don't,
I understand where you're
yeah.
coming from, but I think the things that you're directing at are more of the safety features, not of that particular job, and they do have policies in place, and I'm sure at some point or another it has come across the board, or it was an administrative guideline. But when it comes to cost, what it's gonna cost the district to test unvaccinated, once a week? That's something that needs to be discussed by the board.
And I can say that that is not a plan right now, to have the district absorb that cost.
But the problem that we're putting in here is we're saying the superintendent shall make these decisions. That's another mark that's put in here, he's gonna make all of those decisions, and I just don't think that's a decision that he should be making, we should be making that. Especially since you don't know what the cost would be, and if it's over that threshold, we are supposed to be authorizing it.
Bad timing, Dana.
Would we,
Bad
but,
timing. I'm
yeah,
just,
but would we wouldn't, if MIOSHA required all new lifts for the gym, because it was determined that our lifts were out of compliance, and Chauncey, you're gonna slay me when it comes to the language on this, and that's okay, I get it. Just people lifting up in the air with harnesses, we would do it. Would we go to the board and ask the board for money to,
Well,
If
first
it's
of all,
over
I
that
was just
threshold,
going
you
in
have
and
to.
your equipment's not right.
right,
your equipment's not right?
You're
My
gonna get
note-
fined first.
You're gonna be fined.
You're
Yes.
fine,
but
right.
you still
And
have
then
to
you
bring
have
that
a
to the
correction
board
action.
to
Right.
be approved.
Right,
And then
Just
you
like
still
a
gotta come
furnace.
to
the
the board.
purchase.
Yes, the purchase.
I can confidently say in the discussions that I've had with other districts and our Neola rep, our attorney, the testing would not fall on the district, the testing costs would not fall on the district. Right now, we have access to tests, order forms, we can access, we're getting them free of charge right now. If that changes, I mean, the wording would all be in the guidelines, but we need to put that together and get that out.
so are there changes that you would make to this motion then?
I think that I just wanna have a clear understanding that if I adopt this policy, nothing's gonna be done. Because we're not authorizing I'm not authorizing anything when my OSHA has a stay order, or OSHA has a stay
Stay
order.
order.
I can't supersede what they have a process of. I have no problem having a district-wide policy ready, should that stay order be lifted tomorrow. But I can't say that we're gonna agree with this and move forward with this when there's a stay order in place. That would entitle our staff to go ahead and start moving forward, which we shouldn't be if there's a stay order. And I know that it's going to make havoc and a lot of work, and it could be a 24-hour crunch time, and it's unfortunate. I can't help what OSHA or my OSHA is doing. There's a stay order in place. I can support, yes, we absolutely do, district-wide, do I wanna support my OSHA and OSHA's? Yes. Do I wanna go around them and dig deeper into this with this kind of language? No. I can adopt it the way it is with the understanding that nobody's moving forward until the stay order's lifted.
So so what I hear you saying, just to make sure I heard you correctly, is that you would not be comfortable with this policy because we don't have a MIOSHA order, and you would prefer to have that order. And then
No.
from that, we have regulation and we bring it,
I can
We had-
approve this right here,
right,
but nothing gets enacted upon until a stay order is lifted.
So wording to this motion would have to be added, is what she's saying.
Okay, so what would that's my question then, what wording would you add to this motion?
This policy would not be enacted to
Until
this
the-
district until MIOSHA, or OSHA, and then MIOSHA following, put things in place.
Lists the state motion,
Which means that,
state order.
so that, would that mean that staff
That's
couldn't
true,
work
that
on
would
it?
have to change that.
Or talk to other
That's what it would mean,
districts?
staff
Or,
wouldn't work
or
on it.
consult with CORE or other school districts and begin the process of preparing for it? That would mean they could not do that at all?
The most
Right.
prepared they would be is that the policy's here, so if they lift it tomorrow morning at 7 AM, you have the policy and the support from the board. If they don't list it until January 30th at 7 PM, you can't do anything with it.
And they could change the.
Can a staff member
Oh, or-
voluntarily submit
I would think
information?
so, absolutely.
Alright.
You
So, I
should
mean,
be able to
that's-
ask for, volunteer, if
Sure.
they wanna put their own out there.
So that's.
But otherwise, you're forcing their hand, which is not right.
Implementing the administrative guidelines and requesting vaccination statuses is not making them do it. It's not making them do it, it's requesting, it's just requesting. So I'd just like to caution you that, and I'm just relaying what other districts are doing. They're being proactive, they're gonna be prepared for this if it goes through. If it doesn't go through, great, we don't have to do anything with it. But if it does, and they say you have to be ready by this date to implement this, and we're not, and they roll out fines, that's gonna be on us. Like, I just wanna relay that. I'm trying to follow the lead of other area districts and the representatives, the legal attorneys that I've talked to. So that's all I can share.
And I completely understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And I love Mark's idea about them volunteering the information or you requesting it. If they don't wanna submit it to you, there should be no questions asked.
Absolutely, so if they don't wanna submit it, then they would go on our database that, okay, these would be the ones that we would have to test if it comes into play.
Or they
Or
were
they
the
can
ones
give
that could
you-
submit it to you.
That day. It's not like they don't have it. I mean, mine's in my wallet, so.
What if we add to the bottom of the reading of the adoption of the policy not to be enacted until state order is lifted?
Oh,
To add that to, if we
Right, 'cause
add
it
that to
already-
what we're approving.
It already has wordage in there that'll
Right.
cease to be in effect.
Right.
But if we can add something in there to say, if I'm following y'all, then it wouldn't take effect at all, and we couldn't act on any part of the
Mhm.
policy until that MIOSHA regulation kicks in.
Right.
and he could still have it's saying authorized to issue necessary administrative guidelines, so your administrative guideline could be voluntarily give us this
Mhm.
information.
It's getting too gray for me, honestly, so either we do it or we don't, like, if you say, if you wanna add that language at the bottom that says, we need to wait until MIOSHA says move forward, then that's what we're gonna do. I don't wanna get into, do a little bit here, or do, you know what I mean, like, either we're gonna move forward and,
All or nothing.
yeah, like, I don't want it to be gray.
I'm fine with it.
My concern isn't so much about, especially if it's voluntary to provide vaccination status, my concern is administrative, there is cost involved already. There's administrative staff time to work on this. So using that same logic, staff wouldn't be able to do that, they would just have to wait. So it is kind of splitting hairs to me, so either I guess I would support the idea that either we move ahead or we
Go to a second
or we
reading.
don't, we go to a second reading or we table it.
So you think if we approve this, and you want no gray area, we approve it as it is, and Dana and staff can move forward and ask for everybody's vaccination status, is what you're saying?
That's what the district is saying that they would do if we move forward, is they would ask people voluntarily, and they would also work on policies and all the other things that they need to do to comply with MIOSHA. So that they're ready, and when there's that's what I'm hearing.
And this policy is not enacted forcing anybody to participate in any of these actions, I guess is the best way to put it.
It says right here, and maybe I'm taking this incorrectly, but it says the superintendent shall keep the board informed of any actions taken under this policy as soon as practicable. That's a key word right there, practicable.
Mhm.
So really, right there, it even says that till it's practicable. So they can't really do anything even if we approve it right now,
Right, so I read it as a
according
two-step
to,
process.
according to reading to this. Am I correct?
That's, I read it that way too, so I
Okay.
don't want our staff to feel like this is something we just adopted and they have to do this.
Right.
I'm just saying that I read this as a two-step process by which, first of all, the district gets ready, they begin to work on this, get
Work
their
on
paperwork in
the,
order.
work on the gate.
They write the policy, there's gonna have to be administrative guidelines, but they cannot compel anyone to do anything until the MIOSHA order comes down. If the MIOSHA order never comes down,
Then it doesn't happen.
then nothing
Nothing's-
happens.
Right, everything goes in the trash, basically,
Well,
that you worked on.
and I don't know, Brian, maybe you have a different take on that.
And no, I think that's a proper interpretation of it. I think it's key to say that they can draft up guidelines and they can prepare them to be put in place. But unless something's practicable or MIOSHA adopts anything, they don't go into effect.
They can't-
Right. So
They
no
can't
one,
force
no one
anybody to
can
do
be
anything.
compelled
Right.
until we have actual MIOSHA order. And at that point then, it's part of what we would normally do with any MIOSHA regulation.
That's how I'm reading it. We just want everybody to understand that's what we're seeing.
And unfortunately, normally these happen over a first and a second reading and we're trying to do all at once.
Right.
So just so I'm clear.
You're trying to understand how we're looking at it.
Right.
Okay.
So by us requesting vaccination statuses, it's not compelling any employees.
It has to be a request, not a mandate.
Right.
Nor would you be able to mandate anything else that may
No,
or may
it
not
has
be
to
in
be-
that.
Right.
That MIOSHA policy, like,
Correct.
Correct.
you wouldn't be able to mandate anything.
Correct.
So this allows the
It
district
gives you a
to
little bit of
prepare.
preparing, just
For
not as much as you would
preparation
have liked.
time.
We wouldn't mandate any of it until, but in preparation, to request those statuses, if people are willing to provide those to us, it'd be helpful, and I think a lot of people would, some may not, but it just helps us prepare.
No problem in asking.
Other than we're wasting time and money.
Right. Yeah. If it doesn't go through, yeah, it's kind of a waste
Well,
there too.
If
I
we're
wonder
not,
No matter which way you look at it.
if we're
What?
not prepared,
I
we're
would've
scrambling
run
to
that
put
one.
something in effect,
Yeah.
it's just a
I
big
was
waste
sitting
of
there.
time.
Already got my note
Correct.
ready.
Either way.
Well, it's two sides to every coin.
So, the motion as is,
Because then when we look
the
at it,
understanding of the motion as is that this is a preparation in case the order comes through. Do we have, is that how everyone's understanding it?
It's not how it
Is
reads
that,
on
I'm
here.
sorry, I can't pay attention. The understanding of the motion is that we are authorizing the school to prepare, and we're not forcing any employee. Correct? Is that-
We have to reread the motion, we have to make a new motion. The way, we have to revise this motion because of how
Correct.
it's written. Because of how we wrote this motion,
is saying we're basically enacting it right now.
right now. So, we're accepting this, but not with that wording. Cause really, this wording isn't even in this,
In the policy.
well, it is at the very
Well, it is,
top
but
of it,
yeah.
but, because that's what the policy, that's what you're calling the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And we shouldn't be adopting this language right here, we should be adopting policy blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
not the language in front of us.
To protect the health and safety of the employee, that part, Julie? that was enacted.
Well, she's saying we're in the motion.
Really, what we're doing is
We're adopting policy PO 8450.06.
Right.
We've
Not
never
any of
read
that
the
other
full
verbiage.
policy
Verbiage.
before, we've
Not
just read
that
the additional
verbiage.
verbiage, we're
We're
approving the
adopting
policy.
Just the policy.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, so now we amend the motion.
Correct.
Here I'm asking my vice president for help here.
Yep.
So we don't vote, we amend it, and then we
Ask for the motion.
ask,
Correct.
Making a motion to, I make a motion that we amend the policy to adopt the policy as this wording, to adopt the policy 8450.06.
done.
Done.
All right, do I have a second on that? So I have a first and a second out there already, so do I need to action on that? Or if you amend it,
I was the second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you were the second.
I made a
Brian was the
motion
first
to
motion.
amend the motion.
I think I can retract my motion.
yeah, okay.
Right.
I just need to know if I need to excuse us for the awkwardness, we wanna get it right. Do we need to take action on the first motion, or by amending it, we settle that first motion? Or did you say, Brian?
I believe if we amend it, that supersedes.
I would agree with that.
I
Okay.
agree with that, cause I
Amendment
made a
would
motion.
supersede
to
the
make
motion that was initially
Yep.
put in place.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Nichols to adopt policy PO 8450.06. Would we have a second?
I'll support.
Supported by Christian. Do we need any more discussion? Are we ready?
Brian, will you, remind me where the language is? I'm looking at the policy okay, never mind, I think I found it.
You got it?
That the policy will cease to be effective.
Yep, the
Yep.
very last line there.
Yep. I just wanna make sure that that was in there.
Yep, so that, basically, that just says, cease to be in effect when the emergency temporary standard is no longer enforced or viewed. The expiration of the emergency temporary standard.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote? All right, roll call please.
Christian,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Halliday,
No.
Nichols,
Yes.
Jeske,
Yes.
Whittington,
Yes.
Souter.
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-1. All right, next up is discussion. Several of us went to the 2021 Michigan Association of School Boards Annual Leadership Conference. Would any members like to report on their experiences or what their takeaways were?
I can go ahead and do a couple of the legislative things they're working on right now.
Okay,
The conference was very good. We had excellent speakers. I wish everybody could go. I wish parents could go.
Thank you.
I really do. Cause the speakers, or at least listeners, cause the speakers were really great. But a couple of the things they're working on in the legislature right now is Senate Bill 664, which is about quarantining students and educated using, physical materials. So as of right now, we all know, we've discussed it, that kids are not being counted that are being quarantined. So they are working on getting that turned over. So they are counted, but of course, they're gonna need to have packets or some way of counting them, kinda like what we did last year. That is what we are all here for, is to educate our kids, and there's other schools that already have this implemented, and if this bill passes, it could always become retroactive, so we should always be proactive and anything and be ready for that. Because we do know we have some days that we're not counted. And that's just money, right there. So they are actually working on that. Hopefully we'll see that come through very soon. The other thing they're also working on is, that's not it, sorry. The House Bill 5404. And this is, basically, it's a Student Opportunity Scholarship Act. This was vetoed by our governor, and it was a good veto. This bill, if it was to go through, it's a voucher system, and it would take $500 million away from our public education. And, that's not good, basically. And if they already have a petition going around, and if that petition goes through, obviously the governor doesn't get a choice. And it did pass in both houses, obviously they got to the governor. So we want to call our legislatures and let them know we do not want this to go through. So please be proactive on that bill. And the other bill is 5424, and this one is on, I might have been wrong on that one, how far that one went. This one was stopped completely, and it is basically where they would take public funds. It's for membership dues. They would revise the school code to provide for school districts, either municipal and public school academies, could not use their public funds for the payment or reimbursement of membership dues for specific individuals or positions. And this doesn't just include teachers, this includes any sports, like our Highland Pines thing. Our schools wouldn't be able to cover that anymore. So this did get stopped, but the representative that brought this to the committee, Pamela Herberger, is pushing. She wants it to go through, so it may be seen again. So we don't want that either, because it takes away from all programs and everything. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, they do have one more they're working on. As you all know, we have to be here, we can't do virtual. Board members can't, and that's all public boards. Well, they're finding there's problems with that, because there are boards out there that only meet virtually, because they don't live in the same areas. So they do believe they are working on it. Individuals are already going and fighting it for those particular groups, but they know they're gonna probably end up having to revamp that whole thing. But as of January 1st, some of those other rules that apply to us, sickness and public acts or whatever, it's only gonna be deployed military. That will be the only ones that will be able to do virtual. So if you feel it's an unfair rule, talk to your representatives, get it out there, since they are working on it.
Thank you.
So I also attended, I was a virtual attendee, so I didn't have quite the selection of courses to sit through, but I did catch all the keynote and legislative talks, which I'm glad you summed all that up, Renee. You did a good job summing up all that.
Thank you.
The two separate kind of roundtable discussion courses that I sat through, one was essentially talking about how the board's governance has a trickle-down effect with getting the most out of our teaching staff, our support staff, and then it goes down to our students. So where there's that equity relationship, not so much financial equity, but equity with getting the most out of the education based on what we do here at the board table. And I thought that was great. There was some good discussion on that. Not all of it was relevant to our district, but it was a good one to sit in on. The other one was an organization called, I gotta look, I wrote it down. It's an organization called Be Nice, and they specifically address student mental health and student suicide rates, which should and always be a concern of ours and our students and our kids. and how they're not only growing in scholastic achievement and education, but their emotional development as well. And they talked a little bit about that. They talked about how teachers and board members, if they go to sporting events, parents, that kind of thing, how they're always kind of the first line of defense in, being sure to lift children up, being sure to be that safe place where they can go and talk to about their issues and things like that. So I thought that was a very good takeaway from that. They had a really good speaker, someone from downstate who was a past board member, I believe, and his son took his own life, and he's been a very heavy activist in this program since then. So it was a very powerful one to sit in on.
Thank you. I also attended and I took some certification classes, which I would very much encourage all board members, and I know it's difficult to break away from jobs if you're, especially when you're traveling or you have home obligations too. But I learned a little bit more about school finance, I learned about policy, about legal ramifications for schools, and my biggest takeaway was about data and how data can drive decision-making, which we always hear that all the time. But it helped me understand the data a little bit better. But the takeaway I got from the speakers was it's not just the data, it's what's happening in the student's life. And data tells one story, but lifting up students, as Brian said, is also part of student success. So I really like that theme. The other, and I think we've been hearing that a lot from our staff too. The other takeaway I had was that as a board, we do rely on our superintendent to tell us about legislation, but we can get involved as board members too, and that was an eye-opener for me. And I'm sure that our more experienced board members know all about this, but we are equal advocates. When there is state legislation, we can appoint members or have members put Houghton Lake's opinion out there and talk about how that affects our district. And that's something I definitely am going to look at myself as a board member when we talk about goal setting in January, is making sure that the legislature hear from us too. Any other discussion items?
Can I say one more thing
Yeah.
on one of the speakers we had was Brandon Fleming, and he was great, and I would, if we could get him at this school, I think he was wonderful. He was a kid that grew up to be a teacher and would probably not have, he probably would have been in a gang if it wasn't for a teacher. So, and what I got out of what he had to say is, centered around, basically the whole weekend, I believe, was centered around love. And to love first and to teach second. And I really do think a lot of our teachers are that way, if not most of them. And an encouragement. And he was great. His story was wonderful, and it would be great to see that happen with a lot more kids. So just one teacher, that's all it took to change him around.
Thank you. Next up is our calendar, and which you can read.
Do you want to comment?
No,
Oh, yeah.
I certainly do.
So, I wanna say thank you to Dana and the central office for the hard work on the policy.
Yes.
I know that when I signed up to be a board member, this is not a policy I ever thought we would have to even consider or think about, and it certainly isn't a position any of us enjoy being in. So we appreciate the work that went into preparing for all of this, and
We read it.
Thank you.
Everything you said, yes.
right.
Yes.
And so
We
just-
usually have many more choices, so
Yes.
especially when it's a longer policy. It has different areas where you can deviate from this thing to this thing, and you can get something to fit your district, and right now we're not given those options very well, and we're told to do one thing, but then somebody's stopping us here as well, and I just think that this is very unique.
the whole situation,
Right.
whole situation. And, going from there, congratulations to him. And
Yes.
also, I know I wasn't on the agenda, but I'm gonna bring it up again. And I'm gonna deviate from the whole health department issues of quarantine and anything. I'm focusing on teaching. Whether our kids are here or not, we need to put something in place to teach them. Whether it's being counted, whether it's not being counted, we cannot let any more kids fall behind. Our job here is to teach, and that is what we need to focus on. One way or another, we need to get that implemented into what's happening.
And I think we've been discussing this now for far too long.
We have, this has been for 2
Way too
years,
long.
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years.
We have-
We've all said from very beginning how we wanted virtual to go. It hasn't. Some teachers do it, some don't. We need everybody on the same.
And if it means
Same
that
thing.
it's time for us to put a policy in place, then I think it's time to put a policy in place.
Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the complaints. I'm tired of kids not being taught,
Kids falling behind.
falling behind. It's not.
And it is what we've heard, it's not every kid has a parent at home who's helping or making sure the work is getting done. Or even, Jen has a great background in being able to educate her kids at home, and her kids are still seeing the fall behind. I am not home. I am not home at the time of day that my kids get home. My husband is not home at the time of day my kids get home. So mine is done via text message. Did you get your work done? And that's my hope and prayer at this point is if my kids are at home in quarantine, I'm sending a text message from work like, I hope you're getting your work done and not playing video games, but in reality, I have teenagers and they're playing video games. So,
This isn't
there-
gonna go away.
we just need something more concrete to be happening with that drive, whether it's more frequent emails or communication from staff to parents and families, more frequent communication to the students who are home, and I know that's hard because we are asking the teachers to put in a full day with the students who are here.
If we're
But
doing,
we
if
have to
they're
do
home
something
and
that
they
is
know they got a
across
kid
the
out,
line.
and if they know they're out, 1 week we had how many kids out?
Right.
There's classes out. Stream it. We have the capability. I'm pretty sure we got that last year to do. Stream it.
If
Then
we
you're
don't,
teaching
then
them
we
all
don't
at the
know
same
why.
time. Hmm?
I just think it would be as simple as this is my.
What we're doing right now.
I'm gonna teach, log in, watch me.
And that's what the state is saying, for it to count, and this is what their rules are gonna be, it has to be those rules that Ben told us before. So it has to be those rules, we might as well start getting it implemented.
And I understand though that, I mean, we obviously want kids in school.
Absolutely.
We want them in school more.
In a seat.
Then maybe we not need to revisit this quarantine procedure that we're going through.
Yep.
Because if we really want them in school,
And our
bottom
numbers are
line
going
is,
down.
we are not following science,
No.
period.
And
We
we're
are
not
picking
following
and
the whole
choosing
guidelines
what
either.
science we wanna follow. And we need something set structurally, so this district, our students, our staff, our parents, and our community members have one clear vision of what we plan to do here and how we plan to teach our students.
Right, and everybody knows it.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, 'cause I'm tired of being left out in the dark.
Turn the light on, Chauncey.
I'm sorry. I gotta pay my bills too, right?
That's why you sit down here.
I know.
Any other
Naughty
board member
girl.
comments? No,
I
okay.
see that.
Next up would be board calendar, which, I'm not going to review for you in detail, but I am gonna say that, the superintendent goal setting, and I heard a lot of comments just now that are perfect for that.
Yep.
Is gonna be Saturday, January 15th. My apologies to, a board member that can't come. The other alternate date would have more board members out. So we're gonna, it's hard to get that speaker.
We
and
need it done now.
We really need it to be done, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And that takes us to adjournment. Unless I missed another number on my agenda.
Nope.
Nope, all right, thank you. Thank you for staff.
You're gonna change this.
Mrs. Thompson,
I don't
Brad,
know, I'll
Barton,
call her second. Yes, it's gonna be on.
don't do it!
I know.
Don't, wait, any day to two.